Yo, what is up everyone? Hope you're doing well. This video is the second part to the 10 or so worst things that happened to fashion in the past decade. This is the 10 or so best things that happened to fashion in the past decade. So just some things to keep in mind is this is completely subjective. This is my opinion. So some of these things on the list I like, you might not like, or you might disagree with, but I would love to hear your thoughts on what the best things were in the comments below. But also quick shout out to my friend Nick. I'll link his Instagram below. He helped me brainstorm a lot of the best things that happened to fashion in this past decade. It's much harder to think of the best things that happened than the worst because people just remember the worst, but I do think that there was a net positive gain in terms of fashion in this past decade here. So let's go ahead and hop right into the list. Some of these are going to be very specific, some are going to be very general. So for my first thing on the list is I have that people seem to have much more different fashion by the end of the decade than they did at the beginning of the decade. And I think this is really facilitated by the rise of the internet, because people could go into the internet and pick out like a specific niche of fashion that fits them, that they like, that they can really explore, and it fits their personal style. Whereas before, you didn't really have as much exposure to different types of fashion. So I just think that's a very general point I have, but I think it's a very important one. I just want to start off this list with that. It could be avant-garde, it could be techwear, it could be minimal, it could be streetwear. Whatever it is, there's much more material for each niche market within fashion. So that's my number one right there. So the next thing on my list is technical fabric. So as with time progresses, and this isn't just for this decade, but over time, fabrics, materials used in clothes, cuts of clothes have all gotten a little bit better, a little more ergonomic, and just a better performing fabrics. Just look at Uniqlo, for example. They have their Block Tech line, which is marketed to be accessible by anyone. You don't need to be super into techwear to get into that and get some fabrics that perform well for daily use. And so that's just something that I think has really taken off in the past decade, and I'm really happy to see. I think looking back onto the teens, so from 2010 to now, I really think minimal fashion has taken off, and I think that's a very notable thing looking back on this decade. Is just simplicity. So brands such as like APC, Acne Studios, they're very simple fits, but they work really well. And I just think that that is a bonus for this decade. It's just the rise of minimal fashion. It's not necessarily my style, even though I really can appreciate minimal style. And sometimes I have certain fits that could maybe be classified as that. But yeah, that's minimal fashion. I think it's a W. I think it's a W in my book. W. Okay. Vans, right? Vans have been a thing since what, the 60s or something? So I feel like, and I think this is disputed as well, but to me, prior to like maybe 2012 or so, Vans were pretty much exclusively worn by skaters, BMXers, and kind of that whole scene of, people who like the X Games. But I feel like now, this decade, Vans have really exploded, and you can fit Vans, different styles of Vans, into pretty much any wardrobe or any style, whether it be minimal fashion, techwear, streetwear, obviously if you're skate. But I do think that that's one thing that really popped off in this decade, were Vans. They just permeate so many different types of styles. Generally speaking, this has been a good thing for this decade. It's just the rise of Vans. They're easy shoes to style. They're good just to beat on for daily use. But yeah, again, I think that's a W. Okay, so this next point is Normcore, which Normcore I think has subcategories within it. So Normcore as a style, I think it's kind of like minimal fashion, just very easy to wear, and you kind of just blend into the crowd, but it's a nice refined style. And I think some really good things came out of it as well, such as not like the Balenciaga dad shoes, but the actual dad shoes, like New Balances came back. I think that's a Normcore piece. I think regular hats or dad caps, I think that was a good thing that came back this decade. And just like things like Hurricane jackets and straight cut jeans, I think it's really accessible. Yeah, I think that's a W. And there's a lot of subcategories to that, so. Okay, so for the next point, I might be a little bit biased because I'm wearing it, but I think this is a pretty specific point as well, but I think the comeback of Champion has been, I think it's a W. I think it can be a little bit gaudy sometimes, a little bit tacky when it's way too branded. But I think for like just normal like cozy wear, I think that's a W in my book. And not that you have to have a champion hoodie, just a nice hoodie that you can layer with and just put on with pretty much any outfit. That was a good thing that happened this decade. Kanye West, which I know recent time, you know, I would say in the past year, he's been a little bit more controversial. I really don't think you can deny his influence over fashion over this decade. Before, with like the Red Octobers and everything he had, you know, then red shoes became a thing. But I think what really nailed Kanye's fashion down was Yeezy, which brought back many different styles. I really think one of my favorite points about this decade was the rise of neutral colors and earth tones. I think even though that was trendy in like 2015, 2016 with the early Yeezy seasons, it's something that I really like in my wardrobe, regardless of whether it's trendy or not. But just think about how much Kanye influenced sneakers, how many shoes were inspired by Yeezys, and even Normcore to a certain extent with like all the Carhartt he wears, but that's more workwear. He also did the leather pants, which I think that might be an L. I'm pretty sure that's an L, but that's in my opinion though. But you know, if anyone could pull it off, it'd probably be him. So I think another point for this decade, the teens, was athleisure. Now, again, not to be confused with like the whole gym sharks thing that doesn't look all that good, I think, and like the gym rats. But just overall, I think athleisure is a very nice thing. Side point, one of my pet peeves is Adidas track pants and Nike shoes. I know I'm not trying to be like a brand loyalist or anything, but I just think and I think generally across fashion, whether it be business casual all the way down to streetwear, is I think things have gotten a little bit cozier, a little bit more comfortable. And I think that has to do with the rise of a little bit more technical fabrics, being able to move better with the body. And also just like society being a little bit more relaxed with what people can wear. So I think you combine those two things and I think that really nails down athleisure. Okay, this next point might be again disputed that it was trendy and became back this decade because people have been wearing it a long time, but puffer jackets. Because puffer jackets are very functional pieces of clothing, especially if you live in a very cold climate. You know, I know it's been like a staple in like New York streetwear. You know, I live in Colorado, so you get like the granola crowd who wears like Patagonia down jackets all the time. Hey, wow, look at that. I think it was now until this decade, in the later part of the decade, that puffer jackets became stylish as well across like the broad spectrum of fashion. Okay, this next point, a little bit, well, it could go either way. I think looking back on this decade, Supreme and that kind of whole scene is a very unique part of like streetwear culture and fashion culture in this decade. Now, obviously, they can go too far with kids, you know, like the annoying hypebeast kids, the ones that I made fun of in my like 10 worst things that happened in fashion this decade. I think Supreme kind of kicked off to the mainstream because it's been a skate brand since I think the late 90s, I think. I'm sure someone will correct me. Even if it's not the best brand and like they have the most unique style pieces, I think it got a lot of people into clothes. And then from there, they could develop their own personal style. So if anything, I think it acted as like a gateway for a lot of people to get into fashion because it kind of appealed, you know, to the masses, like normal kids, like, oh dude, check out this fucking Supreme shirt. And then after they get into it, they can find their own style, which I just think that's a huge positive. So, yeah. Okay, so wrapping up the list here, again, there's always a little bit of a downside to a lot of these points, but I think black slim jeans has become a staple in so many different styles and so many different wardrobes that I think it's worth mentioning. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed that. Please let me know what you think is the best things that happened to fashion this decade in the comments below, because like I only briefly know about like 2% of the whole fashion industry. So it's impossible for everyone to know everything that's going on in each niche of fashion. And even that, I only know like surface level stuff. And so me, I'm just kind of pretty much an average person. I'm only maybe 6 years into being into clothes as a hobby. So I'm still developing my own style, so I only know so much. So I would love to hear what you guys think is the best in your specific niche of fashion, or generally as well. So again, thank you for stopping by. Hopefully I will see you in a video pretty soon. I just got done with school, so got a lot more time coming to make some videos. Yeah, I will see you in a video pretty soon.